Bienvenidos sean todos ustedes a esta transmisión. Welcome to this special transmission. It's special because we're doing it on Saturday, but it's even more special because we have a particular guest, one of the people that I really enjoy talking with, at least in the Twitters, because we didn't have the pleasure before of talking face to face, but we actually are using this as an excuse to have the pleasure of talking, and I am referring to the good Matthias Keller. How are you doing, Matt?
Hello, Dan. How are you doing?
I am just doing fine. How is the lovely weather right at your corner of the world?
It's particularly warm today, which is great because I closed all the windows and made everything airtight, so they don't come sounds from outside. So it's particularly hot in here. Perfect Mexican weather, I guess. But for you, it would be probably too cold still. But for me, we're not used to those temperatures.
Well, it's kind of interesting because when it rains a lot, for example, right now we are like in rainy season here in Mexico City, and a lot of people like to say, well, we have some sort of weather like they have it in London. Yeah, right, in London they probably think the same about our weather. So as you can see, we're having some international weather sharing. I don't know if we can say it like that.
Well, I have never been to Mexico, so I have no first-hand experience. But you, on the other hand, you were in Germany once at least, I know, so...
Well, we can share perspectives, and well, yeah, you are right now enjoying of some Cancun-like weather, so don't worry, you're having a nice experience in there. So actually, to put people in context, the idea for this discussion happened because an event, a world event or something like that related with a sport happened, right? Can you tell me how we actually agreed to have this show?
Well, I'm here because our football team sucks. Just to put it blunt. Now, we had a bet because, in the World Cup, Mexico met Germany, and well, one thing led to another, and I did a stupid thing, which is agree to a bet because I was sure we're gonna kick your asses, but well, didn't happen.
Well, to be completely honest, I actually was sure that you were going to beat us. It took us by surprise in here.
I only took the bet because I thought it was a sure bet, But,
and actually, it was kind of, let's say that just for the lols, just for fun, because if you lose or if you won, if you had won, we actually were going to do, but a different topic. The conversation would still happen, and if actually the perspective was what was going to happen if it was a tie.
Something about cheese. I'm not sure why you chose cheese, but you wanted to talk about cheese.
Yeah, I just thought about a neutral territory, so chocolate and cheese just came to my mind, but well.
Switzerland, of course.
There you have it. So, and this is just a conversation about, well, in Churros y Palomitas, the main page, we have a section focused on interviews with people who knows more about certain matters. And in this case, we want to talk about a general perspective about how the cinema, how the movie experience, either by going to the movie theaters or actually enjoying right at home, can be different from place to place. Hopefully this will become a series where we have more international guests, and I am really glad that we can start this section with you, Matthias. So from your perspective, so the people have a little bit more more information. Where do you live right now?
I live in Germany, in the south of Germany, southwest of Germany. The city is Konstanz, near the famous Lake Konstanz. So I'm at the very south of Germany, next to the Swiss border.
All right. And for example, is it common for people going to the cinema, like in the weekends, just to have some fun or something?
Yeah, that's definitely common because it's not just the weekends, because a lot of the cinemas have special events or days on certain other days. So usually it was that you go on Friday evening or on Saturday evening, the typical weekend activity. But a lot of people nowadays just go whenever they have time, which is all over the week. Or, for example, if they have a special event like a sneak preview, something they don't know which movie they're going to see. So there's a special day on a lot of cinemas. That's Monday, for example. So you go on Monday, or if you have a movie which is coming out on Thursday, you obviously go on Thursday because you want to be the first to see it on the first day. So it's not just limited to the weekends, but generally the bulk of the people is going on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday is more, yeah, well, Sunday evening, but also the children go on maybe Sunday afternoon with their parents. So.
It's interesting that you mentioned like a Sunday afternoon because, and I asked this because I don't have a lot of context. I only spent like, what was it, like 3 years ago, 2 years ago, I had the chance to go to the Berlinale at Berlin. And obviously the difference that you can have at the film festival, it's different to what you can have at a regular time. And for example, do you have different prices according to the time of the day for the movie tickets?
Yeah, that depends on the cinema you go to, of course, but usually the price you pay, or at least that's what they tell you on the counter if you ask. It depends on the length of the movie. So if you have a very lengthy movie, one of those epic World War II movies or something, you pay more than if you're just watching like a short comedy with your kids, for example. And then there are also special offers on Sundays, like if you have a girls' night or something, women pay only like 50% or something, or if they pay, they get something extra. So you can generalize for every day, but yeah, it depends mostly on the length of the movie and the type of the movie.
Interesting, because just to have a little bit more context, in this side of the world, for example, both in the United States and also in Mexico, you have the matinee programs where you actually pay a little bit less if it's before the, let's say, like the rush hour times for movies, which are usually the afternoons or nights. So if you go, in this case in Mexico, to the cinema before 2 p.m., before the lunchtime, it's actually cheaper. It's like 10 pesos, which will be like 50 cents of euro, but it's a little bit cheaper. And do you have any idea? And I know that this depends of the chain that you go. How much is it usually to the cost of a ticket for a film?
It
depends, right?
Question, because I just talked about this an hour ago with someone, because according to official statistics, the movie ticket price, the average price, is somewhere around 8 to 9 euros.
Okay.
So that's the average. But I can remember the last time I went to see a movie that I paid less than 10 euros. It was more like 12, 13 euros. And especially if you have something like a 3D movie, IMAX or whatever, you can pay a lot more. So I personally can't really remember paying less than 10 euros, but according to statistics, it's somewhere between 8 and 9 euros on average.
Right, and actually that makes sense. I remember that, once again, my experience is limited. It was around 10 euros a ticket, which when I was there, obviously the peso is not at the same level of the economy, in this case of the euro. So I was like, I'm going to pay 10 euros for a ticket for a movie. In this case, it was at the Superlice in Berlin. And I was like, this is really expensive. But for example, in the case of the film festival, they release the tickets with this cost, but about 20 minutes before the screening, they actually lower the prices, and it cost me 4 euros the ticket, because they rather have a room filled with people instead of just empty seats. So you actually have the line for, even though the weather was kind of not nice, it was around February, so it was snowing outside. You have a line with people waiting for the tickets, and I was like, well, I want to assure the fact that I can get a ticket for this particular movie. I believe it was 40 years, because I really wanted to watch that movie, and I was like, well, I am willing to pay the 10 euros, and they were like, the system is closed, so you have to wait in line, but you will get a discount. And I was like, no, but I want the ticket without the discount. I have to wait, because I don't know why they do that. Actually, it was better for my economy, but
yeah, maybe in this case specifically because it was the Berlinale, because maybe it's for them bad publicity if you have a cinema which is half empty and no people in there, so they just give it out just to fill up the seats. So it's the same with the World Cup. If you have a stadium with only half the places set with all the people, so just looks kind of funny. But again, it depends from on the cinema, on the theater you're going to, whether they have some kind of discount or last minute discount or specials or something. So again, the number I told you was just the average over all these. That's including the large cinema chains and the small ones and all the special cinemas there are out there, theaters there are out there.
Yeah, and if once again to have people in context, in this case in Mexico, for example, we have a main chain in here which is Cinépolis. They between Cinemex and Cinépolis, which are the two main chains in this part of the world, they pretty much cover around 80% of the cinema offering in this case. Some of the most important, or at least as far as I know, chains that we have in Germany, it's, let me share my screen, is the Cine Stars. And I was looking, for example, in this case for Sicario 2, and obviously they have different offerings. If you have your particular membership card, you can save €1. It's about €10 for this particular movie in this case. Obviously, if it's IMAX, it will be more expensive. 3D, it's a different price, but well, that's at least one of the references. And this actually takes me to a different topic that I want to discuss. And I am looking at the movies that are in one particular cinema. This is in the Kino Berlin Original at the Sony Center, and they have the advertisement for Mamma Mia, for Sicario 2, for Hotel Transylvanian, and some other movies. But I don't see a lot of European movies or German movies. Do people complain, at least in Germany, if they don't have an offering in their that was created in their own territory?
No, not really. I think it would be different, for example, in France, because they're very particular in this case. For example, they have on the radio, a certain percentage of songs has to be French and stuff. That we don't have anything like that in Germany. There are programs which promote German movies and which you can get money if you are making a movie, for example, and stuff like that. But there is no quota, for example, that you need to show a certain number of German movies on a given day, on a given week, or anything. So it mostly depends on what's the mainstream right now. If there's any good movie, any blockbuster movie or something that is particular to Germany, for example, if you would look at the list of the last year, the best movie, not just the national, but also the international one, was Fuck You Goethe 3. So that's a German movie, which is very, very popular. And on this last year, it just came out on top. So there was a German movie on top. But if you look at the rest of the movies, it's mostly US movies, because those are the blockbuster in the all the big movies that everybody's talking about. And the German ones, well, it's kind of every few years you have a different genre that's on vogue, that's popular. For example, if you look at the national list right now, you'll see a lot of comedies that are from Germany. So if you want to see a comedy, good luck. If you want to see a German one, you have about the right time now. But if you go back a few years, or maybe 10 years, there were a lot of World War II movies or Cold War movies or something as drama. So it always shifts, and people, I think they don't really look after what nationality the film is from, at least when it comes to mainstream. If you go down into different subcategories, if you go to special programs or something, then that might change. They might look for Eastern European movies, German movies, or I don't know, Latin American movies or anything, if they have like a subculture or something, or don't want to see those. But if you go with the mainstream, the US movies are still on top, usually.
And in case that people are interested, I will be sharing the link of where you can get this statistic. Particularly, Jaime Rosales, who is in Facebook watching this, he's one of our main information providers when it is about box office for international and national box office. And it's at the ffa.de, and I will share user links in general. You can see the lists for the entire for the years or for particular months, in case that you want to watch it. And we have a couple of questions and comments from the audience. In this case, from Via Twitter, Joel Mesa, he's mentioning that he has been to Europe twice in several countries in 2001 and 2004. The movies at regular theaters were basically the same that were playing in the US and Mexico, so he was disappointed. Ernesto Diaz Martinez is mentioning, I will translate because it's in Spanish, Hollywood rules. In some countries, the national cinema can be competitive, but those are like the exception, not the rule. And he's talking specifically about France, which you mentioned, and the India. And some other comments that we have. Erwaso via Twitch, he is talking about what about Avengers Infinity War? Was it like a big smash hit in Germany?
I'll have to look it up. It was a smash hit, so I don't have the numbers for that.
Don't worry.
But I want to address something. One of the comments was that he was disappointed that it was basically the same thing he saw in other countries. There are different type of cinemas. So if you want to see something like a special genre or special type of movie, you might have to go to a different cinema than he went. So that's something. I mean, we have about 1,600 movie theaters in Germany all over the place. And if the large chains are the ones that produce the most profit and make the most money out of it, but they are only a small percentage of the actual cinemas, the total number of cinemas. So if you go to the movie chains, you have like 200 theaters all over the place belonging to those chains, and the rest of them are smaller cinemas or are a special kind of cinemas. So, for example, we have what we call Programmkino, which are usually small theaters which show movies outside of the mainstream and have special programs and events and stuff like that. So if you want to see German movies or documentaries or something like that, you have to go to one of these cinemas because they are specialized on that and they have their little niche where they exist outside of the mainstream.
Mm-hmm. And I will just share, once again, it's sorry if it's just about my information, the information I have. I don't want to brag that I have been traveling around the world, something like that, but it's you to share some of the experience. And I remember in this case in the Berliner Festspiel, it's more like an arty, they present more like plays, but when they have projection of movies, obviously they are not going to share screen or compete with Avengers or something like that, because it's more focused on this kind of exhibitions. And actually, just to make another comparison, we were looking at what was shown in one of the main chains that we had in this case in Germany. Let me just share once again the screen. And yes, you have some in IMAX. The Avengers, there you have it, Derwaso. It's showing in there. Deadpool, Solo, Hereditary, pretty much just Hollywood films in this case. But also, if I want to take the information, and I want to say that in Mexico we have a better understanding of international cinema, which we don't have, I can just select one particular cinema here in Mexico City, where, well, of course you have Skyscraper, you have Grease, for example, but you have also La Maldición del Diablo, some Japanese anime, Gintama, this is a Japanese movie, Tokyo Ghoul, and a Happy Ending from Michael Haneke. So we actually have a better variety of cinema. Yes, if I want to focus on this particular cinema, which is where these kind of movies are being shown, even though if it's part of a bigger franchise, they specialize in this. And I mention this because, for example, some good friends that do film commentary, one of them is from France, and he's always saying, well, in France we have a better distribution. And I was like, well, let me just check what you are showing in Paris in one of the theaters that are at downtown, just to compare the information, and it was pretty much this. Or perhaps I am mistaken?
Yes, if you look at the large cinema chains, if you look at the websites, you can also find special movies if you're lucky, but you have to look very carefully in the program. If you just look at the normal program, they'll show you all the blockbusters, all the big movies, but on the afternoon slots or the side slots or the unpopular ones, for example, you can find older movies or special movies. And again, the blockbuster chains will always focus on mainstream. So if you want something special, you just have to go to a different cinema. That's all.
Exactly. And I want to get back to the numbers that you were sharing with us about the national and international box office from last year. And one thing that actually struck me the most is that the number one for both national and international is, I will mispronounce this, but it's Fuck You Goten. What's that in English?
That's actually a wrong pronunciation and writing of Fuck You, Goethe. So Goethe is the author, your famous author Goethe, and Fuck You is just, I must admit, I have never seen any of the 3 Fuck You Goethe movies, but they're immensely popular. It's just not the genre, the comedy genre I just watching. So I have never seen them, but it's about, that's a play on the whole storyline that they can't write Fuck You, and something about children in school or young adults at school and stuff like that. So.
Oh, and actually, yes, as you mentioned, it's part of a trilogy. Actually, I believe that I haven't watched, but the first one or the second one actually was released here in Mexico too. So perhaps I will be look forward for the third installment of this fine cinema. We're looking at the trailer for the third installment right here. But
I'll argue with the fine one, but okay.
Well, but one thing is that the popular culture is part of the culture too, so I'm not going to dismiss it.
True.
But however, and you mentioned this, most of the German films that actually were box office success were comedies. So people actually want to have fun at the movies. Why is that?
I don't know. No, but it's not just that it's comedy. If you look at the national ones, a lot of them are also children's movie or young adult movies. So it's not just comedy, because of course they're a comedy, but also targeted at a younger audience. So that's just something that it's their niche right now. It appears in German film that they are focusing on comedy because everyone is watching them. So, but if you look at the list, you have the list up there. So, Bully Parade, that's also comedy. Bibi and Tina, that's a cartoon movie, a very popular cartoon character for young girls, especially. You have out of the first 20, almost all of them are comedies, and a lot of them are children movies. So, just that's something they produce that sells a lot of money right now. That doesn't mean that there aren't other genres in German movie that are successful, but they're not that successful in terms of sheer numbers.
But actually, that makes a sense, and I mentioning this because at least in Mexico we have some, not controversy, but once again from the highbrow critics, they complain a lot about the fact that, people should care more about documentary films, about people that show the reality as it is. They shouldn't be wasting their time with a comedy from, in this case, Eugenio Derbez, like Swept Away. Overboard, sorry, it's the name of the film that was released, and it was, for Mexican standards, it was a big hit in here, and the United States, it had some nice numbers. When it arrived to England, to the United Kingdom, obviously they got horrible reviews because, well, it's just one movie that is not for this kind of market. But as I mentioned, the highbrow critics, they are like, well, you should be watching different kind of cinema. And in this case, well, comedy actually sells if you offer the product that people want to watch. They will go and watch it, which is something that in Mexico, and yes, I'm talking to you Mexican filmmakers, please don't complain that you have to establish quotas for the movie theaters, so they have to show 50% Mexican movies, and because people will go to watch something that they like, something that they want, something that will actually offer them a different perspective, and it has to have quality. Some other comments that we have in this case in Twitch, Erguaso is mentioning that, for example, in all cinemas have all type of movies, which is right. And he was mentioning a little bit more about the offerings that they have in Spain. Erguaso, if you can share with us via the comments, what are some of the big hits that you know in Spain, and perhaps a Spanish movie that did good at the box office, please send you those numbers and I will be reading them. And you can also, people who is watching this, you can also read it in the comments that are in the chat down here. But let's go back to the topic, Matthias. And as I mentioned about the quotas, and that we touched this a little bit at the beginning. You mentioned that there is actually not kind of quotas. You don't have filmmakers riding in the streets like because they want to show more local cinema in the screens, right?
No, they don't have the rights in the streets, but they are always pushing for more local productions, more German movies, or mostly maybe their special genre they want to promote. And as I mentioned before, we have the funding institute, the National Film Funding Institute. It's called in German Filmförderanstalt, and they actually promote and give even money to filmmakers to promote German movies, to promote cinema in general. And so there are those people who actually promote and help to develop the whole thing. But again, as you said, it's not... people want to see what they want to see. They don't want to see a certain genre just because it is a German movie. They want to see The Last Jedi or Avengers or whatever they are particularly fan of. So if a lot of people like this, this will certainly stand out, whatever you do. So, but there's one thing I just want to mention. It's not just the program itself that's different in between the certain types of cinema, because something that's especially for me interesting. I like to watch movies in their original language if I can. So usually I want to watch movies in their original English version and not just the dubbed version everyone gets. But it's particularly hard to find screenings of English movies, especially if you go to the large cinemas. Yes, they have certain movies and certain times. They're not usually at the prime time. They're maybe later or in the afternoon or something. Then if you're lucky, you get a movie in your English version, for example. But the big movie chains usually don't promote them as much unless it's something big like Star Wars. But if you want to see an original version of a smaller film or a special type of film, you usually go to one of the smaller cinemas that focus on that type of stuff. And if you're lucky, you can watch them there. That's something, for example, why I usually don't go to one of the large cinema chains, because they just don't show the movies I want to see, or if they show them, they don't show them the way I want to see. And of course, with the advent of streaming, it's even easier for me. I don't have to go to the cinema. I can just watch it online.
And actually, well, you're touching two topics that I want to talk a little bit more. First one is like, if you could say the percentage, in this case of movies, you have like over 50% of movies are being shown dubbed in German in this case.
All of the movies that are shown, unless they are special movie types or special documentaries or a special genre, they are all dubbed. So every movie you see is in German. Period. It's the same on TV. On TV, everything you see on TV gets dubbed. It's unlike, for example, the Netherlands have it that they usually show movies on TV. If they are American movies or something, they may show them in English and they have the Dutch subtitles. But in Germany, it's all dubbed.
And well, actually, that's really common. I remember the same thing that happened in Italy. Well, pretty much in all around the world. Because after all, you have to adapt the content to the audiences. And in this case, if the audience, for them, it's easier to watch something in their own language, referring to the spoken language. And this is one trick that I believe Brian Bruce Wood mentioned in Core Killers 1 month ago, that in Netflix, in this particular case, they first were showing the shows around the world in different language, usually in the original language, with subtitles to the language that was most common in the part that you were. So you could watch, in this case, a French, an Italian, a Spanish, a German show in Netflix. It will be shown with the audio, in this case, in German or any of the other languages. The subtitles will be in your preference that you have already put, in this case, in English or in Spanish, in my case, if I wanted. But they moved the algorithm and they actually switch it, so you will be shown the same show with the dubbed version. And this actually assured that people were going to watch more time of the show, because it was going to be for them easier, for most of the people easier, to just watch something in their own language instead of trying to change the language. For me, I agree with you. I rather watch something in the original language and watch and read the subtitles, because, well, two movies, it's like if you have read one book or something like that. not really. But I rather have the original version, the original language. But they switched that, and they actually instead of people just watching 10% of a movie, they moved that to up to 60%, which is a huge change. So,
see, on the other hand, I hate subtitles because whether or not I need them, my eye always goes down to the subtitles. So if I watch a movie in English, I perfectly understand everything. I can follow the whole plot without problems. But if there are subtitles, I'll always read them. That's just something I do automatically, and then I miss half of the action or whatever is going on the screen because I'm reading subtitles. But that's something. Everything on TV is dubbed, so that's why I usually don't watch any of the movies that are shown on TV because I just want to see them in the original version. But on the other hand, there are also a lot of special events or something. For example, the town where I grew up, there was a special festival called the French Movie Festival, Französische Filmtage, and they were showing only French movies in their original version in all of the cinemas. So there are certainly those events where they specifically focus on that and specifically say, well, there are maybe dubbed version of this movie, but we're not showing the dubbed version, we're showing the original one because it's the theme of the festival.
Exactly. Well, we have a little bit more of the comments in Twitch. Erguaso is commenting that we can see Campeones, which is a movie about a group of people with different capabilities, people with problems walking. I don't remember the name in English. When, for example,
with disabilities.
There you have it. Thank you. People with disabilities, which is one of the main films having a lot of success in this case in Spain. And for example, Joel, who has been really active, he's mentioning that true complaining about quotas versus making good movies is part of the argument. But there is also the audience's prejudice from decades of terrible Mexican movies. This in case of the situation that we have in here, because just to give you a little bit more context, Matthias. Part of the 70s and 80s, we have something sort of a subgenre of cinema, which is called the sexy comedies or sexy comedias, which is, well, obviously comedies, but with some sensual, sexy element in there. So these kind of movies were like for people who weren't well educated. A lot of people had the prejudice of saying, well, this is what poor people will watch. And to be quite honest, that's just a misconception, but that was a prejudice. So a lot of people, and I'm including famous YouTubers or tweet stars like Chumel Torres, he actually has a show in HBO Latin America where he was mentioning about Mexican cinema and the examples of horrible Mexican movies, and that's why people in Mexico don't want to go and watch a Mexican movie. And he just talk about El Taxista, the horny cab driver, for example, is one of the titles, and it's like, man, you are picking a title of a movie that it wasn't even shown on the cinemas. It was something that you could buy in a different market. But you are not comparing fairly to a different kind of movies. So, well, that's just to putting the context in here. One of the other topics, I don't know if you can give us some information, but you mentioned about this. There is part of the government who is funding the production of movies in Germany, right?
Yes.
And
there's actually a law that establishes a body that solely deals with that kind of stuff. So they are funding them, they are supporting the interests of the German cinema, all of that.
And for example, obviously I don't believe that they have like a big part of the general budget. After all, culture never gets a big part of the yearly budget, in this case of the government. But the movies that have been produced, in this case with this kind of fund, do they actually get to the people, or do you have to go like to special film screenings or film clubs to watch them?
No, I don't think you have to go to special cinemas for that or special theaters. I'm not entirely sure how they distribute these fundings. I mean, you can apply for it, but I'm not sure what the criteria are for you to apply. And there's a committee which decides, well, you'll receive funding and you won't receive funding. I'm there is a huge law about this, especially for that, written for that, and you can all read that up. But I'm not firm on that, so I just can tell you the budget, the annual budget of the Filmförderanstalt is around 76 million euros a year.
All right, so that's actually way way better of the budget that we have here in Mexico. I don't know the numbers, but well, I will always say that we are the underdog in this category. I am making the point of my filmmaker friends who are always complaining that we don't have enough distribution or something like that. Well, we're pretty much about to finish this show, and I just want to remember people that if you want to check a little bit more of this information, you can get to ffa.de, where you can get, in this case, the information that we were sharing before, which is really interesting. We can see, in this case, I'm looking at the national the national box office numbers that we have in here, and the films that we have in here from the top 20, from the top 40. But at least it looks that you have a way better distribution of the kinds of films that made good numbers in the box office. It's not just films that are from the from a certain part, or at least that's what it looks for me, because in the bottom, from the place 21 to the place 40, we have films like Elle, that's a French film, I believe, and they are including this in the German numbers.
Which one is it?
It's number 39, but you can see actually in 36 and 35.
Okay. Yeah, maybe it's included because it was part German. You know, as you see, all of them have, I don't know,
co-productions.
I don't know this movie in particular, but if you have shared production from different countries, they all include them because they have at least a part of it is German, and maybe they even received funding for that. But again, that the funding does not have anything to do with the box office numbers, of course.
No, but it's kind of interesting because a lot of times we actually think about people like to watch either black or white sides in an argument. So in this case, because we're including co-productions, shared productions, it's interesting to see those numbers. Well, Matthias, if people want to discuss a little bit more about this or about politics, where can they find you?
They can find me on Twitter. I mostly tweet in German, of course, but I always sprinkling a little bit of English. And if you want to talk to me or ask me something, just give me a shout out. The Twitter handle is @Matzekut, which might be in some kind of show notes probably, because otherwise I'll have to spell it out for you. If you want to talk to me, just hit me up there.
There you have it, and also you can see it's written in the lower third, so you have it in there. Matthias Keller, use the look for him, and I will be also included in the show notes. So let me just check one final round to see if we have more comments in there. Saludos a Dinora Recio, Joel, Esther, and Hugo y Jaime, and Piojo Fat, and all the people who were watching us in Twitch, in YouTube, and in Facebook. Thank you very much for your time, and especially Matthias, thank you much for your time and for the pleasure of sharing your knowledge about this topic and open a little bit more our eyes to the general panorama on cinema. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so remember that the audio version, the downloadable version of this show will be available probably today in the afternoon, because I have nothing else to do. No, actually, I have a lot of things to do, but I will pretty much just upload the audio like in half an hour or 1 hour. Thank you very much for watching us, and I remember that we will have also another show next Tuesday. It will be at 8 p.m. Mexico time, Central Time in the United States, where we will be talking with Zach Thompson about one of how can you create suspense and horror in the comic books. So until then, I was Dan Campos, and I still am Dan Campos. Thank you for watching me on end credits.
Nothing in particular. I just was amazed that there are so many questions live and comments. Also, something you need to keep in mind when we talk about the